All right, welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're unpacking something absolutely fascinating, the ultimate journey of the human mind. We're going to map out how we can evolve from being totally trapped in our own overthinking, anxious loops, what we call metacognition, all the way up to a state of unbreakable structural wisdom, or coordinate 2269, by using the 1912 protocol. We'll be looking at ancient texts through a really fresh structural lens to figure out how to upgrade our mind's operating system. So, let's just dive right in. Think about this for a second. Are you simply aware of your problems, or are you capable of living completely unbothered right inside of them? It's a pretty heavy question, right? You see, modern culture loves to celebrate self-awareness, but honestly, a lot of times that just means we're hyper-aware of our anxieties, and we end up stuck in this painful, endless loop. But the true goal? It isn't just to coexist with the contradictions in our lives. It's to remain absolutely unbothered and perfectly whole inside of them. Let's look at how we actually achieve that. Section 1, the trap of self-awareness and the metacognitive loop. To start, let's examine a very specific coordinate from our source material, 2187. This is the famous moment of Yūnus, trapped in the darkness. Structurally speaking, this represents our base reactive state, the animal state of metacognition, just action and faith operating under immense compression. It is literally consciousness observing itself in the dark. You wake up to your situation, you recognize your actions, but you feel completely paralyzed. And notice how these layered darknesses actually function. First, you have the external condition, the physical darkness itself. Then there's the internal realization, which is the self-analysis. And finally, the divine witnessing, or the awareness of the observer. So what happens? You end up with a recursive loop, self-observing self-observing self. It's the ultimate hamster wheel of modern anxiety. Left unresolved, this doesn't lead to peace, it just leads straight to mental fragmentation. So this slide perfectly illustrates the massive difference between where we are and where we really need to be. Metacognition simply says, I see the contradiction. And hey, great, you've diagnosed the problem. But guess what? You're still suffering. Wisdom, on the other hand, says, I can remain whole inside the contradiction. Just seeing the problem is not the cure. We desperately need a structural anchor to evolve from that fragile awareness into unbreakable wisdom. Which brings us to Section 2, activating the anchor with the 1912 protocol. So how do we actually break out of this loop? We transition to coordinate 1912. The text here commands Yaḥyā, take the book with strength. I want you to really notice the language here. This isn't a command to just passively contemplate your life or sit back and overthink. No, it is a command to actively execute, to take hold of something solid. This is exactly where the anchor drops, and this is how we evolve from metacognition to wisdom with 1912. We define this as the 1912 activation, driven by quoa, or strength. Think of it as the ultimate structural stabilization of the self. By planting this invariant architecture, the book, straight into our consciousness, we violently interrupt that infinite mental recursion. You literally stop drifting in the dark and finally gain a baseline equilibrium. It's like installing a brand new, ultra-stable operating system for your mind. Mapping this all out, we get a beautifully clear sequence. Phase 1 is 2187. You're trapped in the darkness of metacognition. Phase 2 is 1912. You actively take the book with strength, activating that anchor. And that leads directly to Phase 3, 2269, stabilized wisdom. This is the exact formula. We evolve from a drifting, reflective consciousness into a firmly anchored, executable consciousness. When you execute that crucial middle step, the 1912 protocol, you are essentially deploying 5 major stabilizing operators into your mind: direction, structure, command, firmness, and inheritance. These operators act as massive circuit breakers. They completely sever that painful anxiety loop. You're no longer just passively reflecting on your reality, you are now structurally aligning with it. Move into Section 3, the tree and the mountain. Let's look at some powerful structural archetypes to see what this looks like in practice. You know, we often think of ultimate strength as being like a mountain, completely unmoving and rigid. But look at coordinate 714.3. It shows us that when the mountain faces the ultimate divine manifestation, it literally shatters into dust. Rigid singularity just cannot hold the paradox. But then look at the tree from coordinate 1424. It survives. The tree represents living or cursive flexibility. It survives precisely because it bends and integrates opposing forces without breaking. This verse right here beautifully defines the tree's incredible capacity. Its root is firm and its branch is in the sky. In biological terms, 1424 shows us exactly why the tree is wisdom. It performs phototropism, reaching high up for the light, and gravitropism, anchoring deep down into the dark earth at the exact same time. It is being pulled in two completely opposite directions, yet it remains one unbroken organism. And that brings us to the very core of what wisdom actually is. Wisdom is when consciousness isn't just aware. It is the ability to hold the dual paradox and live in it. Descent and ascent, light and form, grief and certainty. The tree doesn't just choose one vector over the other. It holds all of these paradoxes simultaneously. You aren't just coexisting with the tension, you are absolutely unbothered by it. That is the structural definition of Ḥikmah. Finally, Section 4, the architecture of wisdom. Let's map out this evolutionary ladder. Here is our master map of consciousness. Notice how we climb. We start at the bottom in the animal stage, at 2187, reactive, trapped in the darkness. Then we move up to the human stage, at 1912. We grab the anchor and become directed. Next, we become like the tree at 1424, holding those bidirectional forces without shattering. And finally, we reach the very top, Ḥikmah, at 2269, a state of pure, stabilized, recursive equilibrium. Reaching that final stage, coordinate 2269, the text declares, whoever is given wisdom has certainly been given abundant good. And this abundant good is not just a collection of random trivia. It is a profound structural capacity. It's the ability to remain unbroken by the world's paradoxes. Alhamdulillah for wisdom 2269. It truly is the ultimate resilience. So, to summarize the core thesis today, wisdom emerges when consciousness becomes executable rather than merely reflective. Remember, we evolve from metacognition to wisdom with 1912. True wisdom resembles the flexible tree much more than the rigid mountain. It's that flexible stability that lets you be completely unbothered, perfectly anchored right smack in the middle of life's deepest contradictions. Let's quickly review the entire journey. We start in phase 1, moving from darkness to painful self-awareness. Then phase 2, the major turning point, taking the anchor with strength. This allows us in phase 3 to become the tree, stabilizing those opposing vectors, which grants us phase 4, abundant wisdom, ultimately leading to phase 5, the unified return, where we exist completely without fragmentation. Step by step, it's a total upgrade. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. You now know the mechanics. So, will you remain trapped in the endless, anxious loop of your own metacognition, just staring at your problems? Or will you execute the command, activate the anchor of 1912, and plant the tree of wisdom into yourself? The blueprint is right here. What will you choose to execute today? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.